Welcome to Cycle Breakers and Moneymakers, a podcast for women of color and first gen who are breaking generational cycles and glass ceilings by going places no one before them has ever gone. I'm your host, leadership coach, and eldest daughter of immigrants, Mariela de la Mora. I left a 16-year marketing career to create a multiple six-figure-a-year coaching business as a single mom. Each week, you'll learn how to build unshakable self-trust, become in demand, lead with confidence, and make more money by being more of who you are. Hey y'all, welcome to Cycle Breakers and Moneymakers. Before we dive into this week's episode, I want to talk to y'all about how I made my first $500,000 in my business through a lot of things that you would not think, namely through storytelling. And I just used Google Docs, didn't have, all the fancy things. And I want to share it with you because from wherever you are, there are things that help you create demand, elevate your messaging, create trust, lower the pressure on yourself, and actually become more relevant and specific and unlike anybody else through things that don't involve signing up for somebody else's framework in like a coaching program or doing a brand shoot necessarily. I did one, but I will explain as and when I knew that I was ready to do that. There's so much that's accessible to you now that could be so much simpler that I just wanted to share with y'all in this week's episode. But just to give y'all an update, I like opening up my podcast episodes with kind of like what's going on. So last week I had shared with you guys that like my daughter had been sick all week. We had just gotten the tarps and the scaffolding taken off of our house. So like I finally had daylight, and just with that on its own, I realized like how much anxiety I was carrying. And now that it's like a week later, I'm just like, oh no, I definitely feel a lot lighter. So just giving myself a lot of compassion and grace for having dealt with not a lot of natural light, all the anxiety I kind of dealt with for 16 months while 16 months, wild, that our house was covered up. And it's like, it's so important in entrepreneurship to really even think about like, why do I feel the way that I feel? What's making my job hard? All of that, because it's typically more than just your mindset. Like sometimes it actually is your physical environment. Your nervous system is always talking to you, right? So it's really important. And I knew that my nervous system was telling me like, we miss natural daylight. We need to get out. We feel cluttered and distracted and all of that. So I'm very happy that that is gone. My daughter also went back to school. She didn't get to start second grade the week that it started because she was sick. So she went back on Monday. So I felt like Monday was the first day that I had like a breath of like just a sigh of relief, I guess. And it really is just like, okay, we're back. We're good. Things like this happen in business. Parenthood will for sure, kind of teach you to how to have grace, how to just like roll with what you've got, how to be agile, how to, adapt. And so whatever that looks like in your life right now, if you're kind of like, oh my gosh, I'm in this thing. And if I'm in the mud and if I could just get through it, it can feel very like tempting to say it's going to be better when you get to like another place, but like there's always going to be a challenge. And so I think that sometimes if you feel like you're in a non-ideal circumstance or you're kind of trudging through the mud, just knowing and almost being in acceptance of being there and not making it a problem and knowing that literally everything is temporary has been so helpful to me. So to whatever degree, wherever you are, if there's something you're desiring to be somewhere else, surrendering and allowing where you are now to be okay and taking the steps to be like, okay, what needs to happen from here? So that was the advice that I needed last week, to just be like, it's okay that you're here. It's fine. It won't be like this forever. And also another thing is I'm very excited because after I record this episode, I am going to head out and have the rest of the day to hang out with my friend Liz and her fiance RC and their super adorable dog Milo. They are in town from Mexico City. They're visiting Liz's family. But then they came and saw us last night and spent the night. And my daughter's in love with their dog Milo. And so I'm just like very excited. I love hosting people in my house. This has always just been like a thing that made me so happy because growing up, my parents were not the people who hosted parties ever, ever, ever. They didn't really want people like in their house. They're just very like, oh, I don't know, that stressed them out. So I was like, I always want to be the person with the extra bedroom that invites people over. And I was like, you have a room anytime, you know what I mean? And so now I am that person. So it's just, I've really just been sitting in how I have my version of success, especially during times where we're fixated on how success hasn't taken a specific form. but it has in other ways, right? So it's like the ability to spend time with my friend today and go enjoy the city, to have a bedroom for them to stay, to decide that if I want to pick up my daughter from school today so that we can go to Dolores Park and play with Milo and hang out, like I can do that. Even though, yes, there's always things in my business and whatever that I'm like, oh gosh, like I have to fix this and this, the results aren't what I want. So that's another thing that I needed to hear is like, we're always sitting in some version of success that like a prior version of you would be so proud. And like you are sitting in that versions of you success right now. So just recognizing that we're all on a journey and just kind of noticing whenever we get to like destination fixation where like the destination is going to be somehow better than where you are. It's just like, yeah, man, we're doing our best. And no matter where you are, when you get there, there's going to be another problem or another thing, right? So that's just been really freeing for me as somebody who was such a high achiever, who is very aware of like what's quote unquote wrong, how much further I have to go, what more, like all the things that like you can exhaust yourself in that sense, right? Like, so wherever you are, just how is that enough? And how can you desire to take steps beyond that? So this week, at the beginning of the episode, I kind of mentioned how like this came up because I'm starting to repurpose content. So what happened was I went into my content bank and Airtable and I was looking through the dates of like late 2021. Late 2021 was a very interesting time for me because that was the year where I made like 80K in the last 2 months of the year and where I had made 70K the first 10 months. So 70K, 10 months. 80K in 2 months. And then from there, it just continued and continued and continued. And like I stayed booked out and all the things. And I think looking back, I when I was looking through the Airtable content bank, I was like, there's not a friggin' CTA here. Like occasionally I'd be like, DM me or book a call. But like most of the time I didn't. I remember people telling me like, Mariela, how are you booked out? You like, I feel like I don't see you selling, but like you are. I don't see you like repeating a promise or a pitch, but like people are booking calls with you. Like, how are you doing it? And I was just like, I don't know. Like that was just, I didn't really think too much of it. But now that I'm a coach and I think I've consumed a lot more coaching that teaches it very much like you have to have a promise. You need to have a measurable outcome. Even if you're a coach and you're a one-on-one coach, you need to have all these things that I realized how I didn't do any of those things. And I still made $500,000 just with what I'm going to share with you. Before I ever launched a group, I made $500,000 through one-on-one coaching, through what I'm going to share with you. And so I've allowed myself to study that and be able to teach it, to say, why does this work when it doesn't subscribe to the things that you would typically think about when it comes to what does it take to market and sell your business? And it's almost like a destructuring of that because I don't think, I mean, I know that I have a structure, but it's not like formulaic. That's really what it is. It's not formulaic, but you're going to be able to listen to this week's episode and just be like, okay, where am I making things unnecessarily hard? Where am I making them prescriptive and formulaic in a way that doesn't serve me? Where am I getting in my head that I can actually make it easier? I am the queen for that. And as a coach, I'm just like, hey, you don't even need to do that. This is the most important thing. So we're going to dive in, but I want to just share parts of my journey of like how I didn't realize it, but I was letting it be simple, the way that I sold, and very organic and very natural, and it worked. So just to open up, for the first, I started my business in the end of 2019, and the first 2020, 2021, all of 2022. Like I said, when I look back at my content, there's not really like CTAs or pitches. So that it's like, it was like a soft, like I was alluding to it, and I would educate, I would tell a story, whatever, but there was never like, I help you to double blah, 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 blah without blah, 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 blah. Like it wasn't ever that. It just was like, if I could read my post out loud and it would sound like something I say out of my mouth, which is so important, right? Because some of the times you're reading it and it's not something you can imagine the person saying. So that immediately creates a division. So I had no direct sales pitch, did not have a measurable result as a one-on-one coach. I don't think you need one, not for one-on-one coaching. You can sell several results. That's not what everybody thinks, but that definitely has been the case for me and many of my clients. I sold 3 different types of coaching. So I had life coaching, business coaching, and leadership coaching. It didn't matter. What I'm going to talk to you about also supported the jump from 6K offer to 8K offer to 10K offer to 15K offer. Stayed booked out 3 to 4 months in advance. I did not have a website. I had a Kajabi homemade website, but it didn't talk about my offers because It just didn't. It was just like about me and how to work with me and my client testimonials. Like that's what was on there. I didn't have a professional brand or website until almost 4 years into my business, like October of last year. That's when I had it. I did have brand photos, but I paid like $300 for the photo shoot, right? So it's like, you need photos. I had photos before I ever made any money. So if you have not taken brand photos, go freaking take brand photos. But yeah, so I had like no sales page for my offer. I only marketed on Instagram. I had an email list, but I didn't really email them almost ever. I did not have a money promise. So that's another thing people think like, oh, you have to have a money promise in order to like make a lot of money. Never had a money promise. Most of my intake forms, when I look back, either money was never mentioned at all, or it was like number 3 on the list. So you also don't need to be selling money. And I never did a workshop or a sales event or anything. No workshop, no webinar ever, until literally the 3rd time I launched Reclamation. That was the first time I did a workshop. So it was just literally showing up on Instagram. I also sold out the first round of Reclamation like this: Google Docs, storytelling, all of the things I'm going to share. So just to break your brain a little bit, like, it doesn't need to feel formulaic or hard. I think that I just have sold in the most human way possible, and it works. And I'd say it doesn't matter what you sell, but especially if you are in an expertise-based business that requires the client to have some level of vulnerability, even if it's just being seen or like trusting you with certain information or like whatever, these approaches, especially with brand storytelling, will really be helpful, because this is what creates human connection. So let's dive in. One of the first things that allowed me to sell $500,000 through story and through Google Docs, just simple, was having clear thought leadership that spoke to a true gap in the market, like an unmet need. What this meant for me was I always spoke to daughters of immigrants, right? No matter what, I would talk about a concept and then I'd say, especially if you are a daughter of immigrants. And the reason this is important is because I could be teaching a concept, but I would always think about my people. Whatever it is that you're doing, whether you're in a service-based business, coaching, consulting, whatever. I have other episodes where I have taught how do you uncover like your specific, thought leadership, right? I have a process for uncovering your PR-worthy thought leadership angles. But essentially, it's, without going into the whole teaching process, every single business, the successful businesses, are speaking to a gap. They are speaking to an unmet need. That's literally the only way a business can exist. Or you are doing the exact same thing and doing it better than someone else, right? So you're either relying on like, you just have better results, or you're like, I actually solve a slightly different problem in a different way. So having clear thought leadership and speaking to an unmet need or a gap in the market was one of the ways. And the thing about that is that it adds a lens to everything you do. So I could talk about business, I could talk about visibility, I could talk about marketing, and I can say, and if you're a daughter of immigrants, it might feel a little bit harder in this way, or you might be leaning this way, and here's why. So always thinking about like, who is your person, or what is that thing that you are seeing and speaking to that nobody else is. So look through my podcast episodes. I forget which one it is, but there's one where I do uncover like, how do you know what your thought leadership is? This is also something I teach in Reclamation Mastermind. That's a lot of what we dive into. I also do this with some of my one-on-one clients. I started with a new client yesterday where that's her goal, is like, she's been marketing, selling for years. She has a successful podcast, but now she's just like, I feel like I have these thoughts and I see what I do differently than anybody else, but I don't know how to talk about it. And I don't know how to like talk about myself relative to that, right? So thought leadership and speaking to a true unmet need. And I had that from the very, very beginning. The second one was I always just talked about my story or different parts of my story, right? This doesn't mean tell the same story over and over, but like I would share parts of myself and I just repeated that over and over. So like if you're only talking about how you help people and problem solution and all of that, you're missing a huge opportunity to connect with your audience, because number one, stories are more memorable. They're 22 times more memorable than facts. So even if you're teaching, how could you tell a story in order to illustrate the teaching, right? But also letting folks into you and who you are, like I said, is even more important when you have an expertise-based business and people need to trust you. So telling the story of why you started your business, why you have the lens that you have, if you use a certain process, why, what your values are, things you had to work through or overcome. All of these things, there's so much gold in that. Like in my coaching session yesterday with the new client we're working together on my Telegram package. So we meet once a month. And then we just connect through Telegram throughout the month. She told me a story about her grandmother who, I don't know if she immigrated from Nigeria or she still lived there, but she was telling me about her grandmother. And I said, in this story, like I just kept asking different parts of it. I said, in this story, you have told me your entire business. Like I get it now. I understand why you do what you do. I understand the unmet need. I know how you do it differently. I know why this matters to you. I can see it. That a story can explain so much more. And I will remember this story. I will remember every aspect of the story that she told me because it touched me, and people will remember stories. This is why I say stories are 22 times more memorable than facts. So knowing what are your brand stories? What are your founder stories? What are the stories that illustrate why you do what you do, how you do it differently, in what way, your values, all the things that shaped you, right? So in my coaching, this is my sellable stories concept, and every brand has stories. So telling stories, either yours or telling stories that illustrate why you do what you do and how you do it differently. That was the second thing that I've always done from the beginning. The third thing is I have always let myself just lean more into just being a human versus trying to be an expert all the time. Recognizing I'm an expert all the time. I just may not always feel super great, right? So I think sometimes we put this pressure on ourselves to have it together and be polished and like be this expert and almost like be behind the podium and be this teacher. But what happens is on the days you feel shitty or things are happening in your life, it's very hard for you to show up in that way. And you almost start to feel like you have to get over it before you can show up for people. And so I just think that in order for business to be sustainable, you have to let it be okay to be wherever you are at any given time. You have to let it be okay that you're having a hard day or that your belief is low or that you just started your period and you're like exhausted. This doesn't mean do the same thing and hold yourself to the same standard every day. That's not what I'm saying. It's just that if you set the expectation that you have to be stage you, polished you, expert, have it together you all the time, that is not sustainable. So integrating integrating humanity and authenticity and vulnerability into your brand will actually make it easier for you to show up consistently. So part of how I was able to make money and even like hit six figures my first year, because that was a hard ass year. Like I was working with a life coach. I was doing like reparenting with her. I was digging into childhood trauma at a deeper level than I ever have. There were days that I was just crying and I was exhausted. And the only energy that I had that day was just to show up for my day job and my daughter as a single parent. And I was processing so much trauma that I like had to nap in the middle of the day, which like I never could do. And yet I didn't make that a problem in my business. So what happened was there's some days because I was authentic and I let my brand just be a human brand and I didn't try to perform. I had my days, right, where I tried to do that, but mostly I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to be wherever I'm at. Well, what happened is on the days I felt like trash and I felt horrible and my belief was low and I was going through my trauma and whatever, I would allow myself to say, okay, my standard is just super, like, I'm not going to ask me showing up, my visibility to do a job. I'm not going to ask my visibility to do hard things today. I'm just going to ask my visibility to be seen. I'm just going to ask myself to be seen, however that is. So I would let myself on those hard days just show up and share the coaching that I needed in that moment. That felt very authentic because then I didn't have to show up of like, hey guys, I used to struggle with this and now I don't. And here's what I learned. I literally was just like, y'all, here's where I'm at. Here's what I'm experiencing. Here's the advice that I need in this moment. I don't know that I can fully receive it, but if I need it, someone might need it. And I just did that. And the thing is on the days that I felt horrible, that actually felt authentic to do. It felt authentic to do. And I think you just have to let yourself, like, let that be enough. Sometimes I'll tell my clients on like your worst days, your visibility just needs to have a very easy job, which is it just needs whatever you got to say just needs to exist outside your body today. That's all it's got to do. Don't worry about CTA. Don't worry about making it relevant and all the things, just practicing being seen and ask less of it. That's it. I do this now with clients. Like I literally created a process for it. One is the visibility capacity plan, where there's certain types of visibility that will feel easier on certain days. Maybe it's like not showing your face on camera, but there's ways that you can still show up to kind of build that trust with yourself. So we build literally like a capacity plan based on what costs you the most energetically to do visibility wise. And on your worst, on your hard days, how could you show up in a way that doesn't tax you as much? But that way you get to be consistent, but you let consistency look different. Does that make sense? Like you can be consistent, but you let consistency look different. So that's how I did. I let myself be human. And that really just helped me not have to feel like I had to perform, which allowed me to be consistent, which actually wound up being my most powerful content sometimes was the days that I showed up and that's how I felt, because I knew the coaching and the advice or whatever that I needed in that moment. And I knew someone needed it, but I didn't have the attachment that like it needed to do something for me. So just letting yourself be more vulnerable and human in your marketing. This doesn't mean go share all your dirty laundry. Don't share wounds, share scabs, like share things that you have like moved on from. And in the moment, if you feel vulnerable, you can just say, you don't have to say what you're feeling insecure about or what you're feeling sad about. You don't have to. You could just be like, hey, today's not, today is like, I'm having a hard time. Here's what I'm having to remind myself in the moment. That's literally what I would do. So letting yourself be human. That was number 3. Another thing that let me make $500,000 through story was I let my stories speak to one person and one promise at a time, or one person, one possibility at a time. Story lets you do that because all you're doing is telling one story about one person and one problem, one story about one person and one possibility. And that person could be you, that person could be a client, that person can be whoever. Story helps you to illustrate things, but it also helps you be specific because you're not talking about a concept and trying to put everything in the umbrella. A story lets you be specific because you're talking about, like I said, one specific thing. And that's actually what creates urgency, not like FOMO or bonus and time's running out and all the things. Urgency is created through relevancy, and relevancy is created through story. So it didn't matter. It doesn't matter if you have a broad range of clients like I did. They just needed to hear one story and they would say, I've seen you, I've heard you, you've been showing up, but you said this one thing and that's what made me reach out. Oh, I heard you say this one thing and that's what made me reach out. That's what I mean by specificity. Relevancy is what creates urgency and what sells, not pushing people, not making them feel bad, not pointing at all their flaws, not, dragging them by being like, here's all the things you're doing wrong. This is what it is. So instead of repeating the same promise over and over, I spoke to one person and one problem at a time through story. So that was number 4. Another thing in how I created $500,000 through story was I would tell them stories that made them believe what was possible versus pointing out what was wrong. Now, this is a fine line because I know sometimes in marketing, you do have to be like, and here's what you're experiencing. However, if you were to read your marketing and you were to think about being your client and read your marketing, and you think about your client is sometimes they're not doing the right thing or they've tried to do it. They're trying to fix this problem. They're sitting in it, right? How would you feel like reading your marketing? Do you feel like, oof, you just called me out, you just dragged me, or does it feel good? Does it feel inspiring or does it feel shamey? So I think that you can tell them stories about what's possible, which I call like possibility aware versus problem aware. Problem aware has its place, but the way that you market teaches your clients how to feel and how to show up to the decision. So if you show up and you are just telling them everything they're doing wrong, sometimes people don't reach out because they actually feel bad. Like it might be actually very relevant and it might be what they're doing, but it creates a disempowering relationship between the expert and the client because it's like you have to imagine, would you say that to somebody's face in that tone? And if you wouldn't say it to their face in that tone, unless you knew them or whatever, but let's say, would you do that? It might make them shut down. So a lot of the way that I would speak to my clients in my stories was like, I spoke to them like they are their higher self, like they are capable. And like, I already see the solution for them and it's possible for them. And then I'd say, you might be experiencing these things, which hits very different than here's what you're doing wrong. Here's what you need to fix. Especially because my clients already default to feeling like they're not good enough and ashamed because daughters of immigrants, like we just have ridiculously high standards. So I think that that's so important is how your marketing feels because you'll either teach them to show up disempowered to the client relationship where they're like, please help me, please fix me, please save me. Or they're going to show up and like be their most empowered version of themselves based on how you talk to them in your marketing. So read your marketing, read your emails, and don't read it on behalf of how you are. If you're like, oh, but I have thick skin. No, that's not necessarily all your clients. Would that feel good for you to consume your own marketing? So that's another thing I would do. I would tell them stories about what was possible. And then I would point out kind of what might be getting in the way versus here's what you're doing wrong. So in terms of Google Docs, I'll tell you this about not having a website and all the things. So I think having a website is important, something. Some of my clients have made multiple six figures and they don't have one, but I would say that people care more about, do you understand them? Do you understand what they're going through? And do they trust you to solve the problem, right? Websites and brand and all of that matters to amplify what's already there. So everything that I'm covering in today's episode is more about how do you create what matters, what there's no shortcut for, and then eventually through website branding, all the things, you're actually amplifying that. So this is, in a way, it's like, this is, you can get really far with none of those things, right? So I literally used Google Docs as a sales document. I still do, but it was my only sales document until, like I said, last October, 2023. The way that I would use Google Docs is when I would have a discovery call with a client, I would go in and I would have their intake form. This is my process. You apply to work with me. I go through your intake form. Based on that, I will highlight things that are like in a different color. Sometimes the color means ask more about this. Sometimes the color means, oh, I think I know what's going on here. I already like have in my mind, okay, where I think I would go with this. And then I walk through the call, right? So then I go through, I ask you a lot of questions. This is my job, right? So I ask you a lot of questions. And then at the end, I will create a coaching plan for you based on that. Every single client, when you get on a call with me, you get a coaching plan. So regardless of whether you move forward, I am like, here's what it is. Here's what you said. And I will give you back your answers. So that document has all of the questions that you said. It has all of my follow-up questions. It has the answer. And then it has like, here's what I would recommend and how we would work together. Those Google Docs, like I sold $15,000 coaching packages that way. I didn't have a sales page. They don't care about any of that. So in a way, it's like, instead of thinking you need all the external stuff, how could you actually be more clear with your clients now? You could use things like Google Docs to just be like, here's what you said. I want you to see, here's what we talked about. I literally will include a link to our call replay in Grain. I use Grain as a software. It holds the call replay, it has the call transcript, and it has like an AI summary. And the reason that I do this is because until I had a website, I was like, I want you to know what you said and what you're getting. Because you think about making a 5-figure investment, sometimes people feel like nervous about it, or they want to talk to their spouse about it or whatever, and they want to have an empowered yes. You think about like, they don't have anything to look at. So I always give people their coaching plan so that they can see, yes, Mariela heard me. That's what I said. Yeah, I feel good about it. Or they can come back and be like, hey, I actually missed something on the call. I wanted to mention this. $10,000, $15,000 coaching offers through Google Docs. So again, it's like the goal is building trust, building a relationship, storytelling, keeping it simple. These are the things that people need. All the other stuff is extra and we'll amplify it later on down the line. But you can, from wherever you are right now, guaranteed can create more demand, make your marketing feel easier, immediately have way more things to talk about, immediately make yourself be unlike anybody else, like completely in a class of your own. You could be attracting inbound speaking opportunities because of your thought leadership and story, because people love storytellers. If you are a speaker, they won't just approach you because you're an expert at something or you're a teacher. It's because you're a good storyteller. That's why people invite you to speak. Inbound speaking opportunities, clients quoting you and quoting things that you've said. This is what happens when you do these things, right? And this is what I help my clients do. So if you're in a season where you are stuck in your head over all of the rules, all of the formulas, you feel like maybe you've lost yourself a little bit in your marketing feels hard, you feel like you have a deeper why, but you're not quite sure how to explain it, or how to convey it in your marketing, you feel like you want to be known for something bigger than your offers and you crave being a little bit more front facing in it and like more of you, but you have a lot of thoughts about that, you're not quite sure. You want to be able to market and sell in a way that is as effortless as just having a conversation and being human versus feeling like you're repeating the same promise over and over. That is all of what I help my clients do. So if this resonated, there's 3 ways to work with me. One is Telegram coaching with a monthly call. It is $6K for 6 months, 6 calls, and they're scheduled as you need, right? So we don't have to stick to a particular date. Like I said, I have clients where I'm working with them specifically on their clarifying their thought leadership, their stories, doing intentional outreach in order to increase like third-party visibility, streamline their marketing, and just really tap more into like the deeper why behind why they're doing it, what they're doing, and even support like price increases that they've recently made. So that's the Telegram and monthly coaching. Like I said, 6K, 6 months, 6 calls. And then there is private coaching, like mid-level private coaching where we meet bi-weekly for either 3 or 6 months. And that is great for, let's say if you're an existing entrepreneur and you're not building a business from the ground up and you just want to focus on specific areas of your business or your life. Maybe you're going through a life transition or a pivot, or you just did, and you want life coaching and business coaching for a specific like chapter of your life, whether this is growing your business, navigating the pivot, getting clear on your thought leadership, all of that, then you can work with me for 3 or 6 months from 5K or 9K. So all of this is in my website. If you go to my private coaching link, it will give you more information. And then there is my classic signature coaching relationship that I have been selling for years and years and years. I've literally worked with over 50 clients in this offer, and that's my VIP coaching where we meet weekly for 6 months. And this is ideal for clients who, number one, are like, no, the calls are the lifeline of the coaching. Like these are my really busy clients with 9 to 5s a lot of the times and a business. And they're just like, they are so busy that like they need the calls. The calls are where we make decisions. It's where they verbally process. It's where we get clear. I have clients that I've been with for years that are in this offer. And there's a specific type of person that this is great for. So these are the people who are like, they want that face-to-face time. They want to be able to just pick up their phone, start speaking into it, voice note back and forth. And if you pay in full for VIP coaching, you get a full day with me in San Francisco, a VIP day. We will work together to put a plan to your goals and outline everything, whether it's growing your thought leadership, whether it's building a business from scratch. We'll meet in San Francisco. We also can do it virtually. And you'll have a brand photographer come and take your pictures. We'll work on a strategy for that, make sure that it really conveys your vision. I've had clients with totally different styles, vibes, visions, and the photos are just fire and will really like work to match it to that vision. And if you don't want to come to San Francisco, I had a client where she was pregnant and couldn't travel. We did her VIP day virtually. I found a photographer in her city and she just took the most beautiful photos to support this new like evolution in her business. So no matter what, I've got you. Reach out, go to my website, marieladelamore.com, click on private coaching, or if you follow me on Instagram, click on the link in my bio. And I'm excited to hear from you. I hope this week's episode was helpful. Again, it's for you if you want your marketing to feel easier, you want to infuse more of you into your marketing, you don't want to overthink as much how you're selling, and you really, really want to stand out and be known as a thought leader in your market without feeling like you have to put yourself on a stage and perform, like you actually can still be human in your business. This episode's for you. All right, I'll see y'all next week.